why we're doing surrender by appointment. Privacy of the owner allows the staff to have an honest and candid conversation behind why the animal's really there. There are many, many strays that we know are actually owner surrenders, but people can't bring themselves to say, hey, I'm having to give up my animal. It's much easier to say, oh, I found this animal. The animal knows them, the animal responds to the name that they're calling them. We can tell when an animal is a true surrender. But them not being comfortable with providing us that information really, really hinders us from helping that animal and helping them. Talk about other alternatives, finding them aid so that the animal can stay in their home. And it also allows us to prevent animals from even coming in to begin with. If we can have those conversations in advance, whether it be dispatch with animal control in the field, when they're making their surrender appointments, that's our initial spot. Okay, have you tried this, this, and this? And we can really start reaching out to people earlier on. So here are some of the alternatives to surrendering pets. A lot of these have been super successful. I'm not going to go through every one of these in detail, but a lot of resources that we can utilize. And if you go online to a lot of these resources, Humane Society, all these other places, they give a lot of direction too. So hopefully we'll be linking that information from our website so people can start exploring that on their own. There are a lot of initiatives coming out for landlord issues. That's still one of the things. Pit bulls are probably the #1 breed of dog that we have surrendered, and unfortunately a lot of housing facilities say no pit bulls. How much removing those breed designations helps? I think it does, because I think there are a lot of housing places that are like, oh, hey, I have pit bulls myself, but these are what the rules are, and you have documentation saying it's a pit bull. So I think it can help, but also just educating that it's not the breed, it's the individual and how well the animal's cared for, and a whole bunch of other factors that go into it. HSUS also provides legal advice that they can delve into. So one of the biggest things that always comes up, Guilford County is not unique in this concern. Pretty much every community that starts a managed intake program says, well, animals are going to be released, they're going to die, people aren't going to follow through, they're going to shoot them. It's any of these resources, that's one of the first things they say you have to overcome. We did it in DC, and DC is like, oh no, these people are bad. But you know what, if they're calling us for help, that's the first step. They care enough to call for help. So if we can provide them resources, then they're likely to utilize those. Even for the strays, there's a lot of programs, especially with kittens, keeping those kittens in their finder homes until they're old enough to be adopted out, so they're not coming to the shelter and using shelter resources and getting sick and stressed and all those things. But all of these organizations have debunked that there's any legitimacy to that concern that animals will suffer if we do managed intake. Again, we're never going to turn away an animal need. If someone says, I'm not going to do that, I'm just going to throw this animal on the side of the road, okay, we'll work with you, come in. We're not going to turn anybody away, but just telling people that this is how we're helping you and how we can best help your animal. And so these are the numbers of intake from February to August for the last several years. We were doing managed intake from February to August of this year. And you can see how much the owner surrenders went down. Okay, so owner surrenders down, people just letting them go wandering. Animal control is gonna be running around like wild. Well, we had no real difference in our animal control stray pickups. And since re-implementing the appointments towards the end of November, we've had a 28% success rate in people rehoming their animals instead of bringing to GCAS. So what that means is our intake staff are calling and following up with people, checking on, you have your appointment, and say, nope, never mind. My friend found it, or I was able to find someone else who could take it, or went to a transfer partner. So that's really good. That's really good. We decreased by almost a third for our owner surrenders. And again, just some of the changes that we've already done, we're doing surrender by appointment. The intake area has been changed to the trauma building. Animal length of stay report is being emailed to local rescues on a weekly basis, and volunteers are being asked to spotlight some of our long timers. Libby, did you want to touch on length of stay real quick?
Yeah, so down in intake, our length of stay is approximately 13 to 14 days for the animals that are down in our receiving area. So that's our strays, all of our confiscation, cruelty holds, all of that.
Rabies
the average
observations.
Rabies observation. Those generally cruelty confiscation holds are usually between 10 to 15 days minimum. And then, our stray holds is 3 days. So our average is about 13 to 14 days down at intake. Up on the adoption floor, our average length of stay is closer to 86 days. The animals on the adoption floor who are staying on the adoption floor are hanging out there for a really long time. I think our highest length of stay right now is close to 156. That's a long time for an animal to be on the adoption floor because they're in a kenneling environment. No animal for a long period of time is going to do well in a kennel environment. Either their health will start to deteriorate or their behavior will start to deteriorate. And we have tons of volunteers who walk them every day and interact with them every day. But we need to reduce that length of stay on the adoption floor significantly because it is way too high.
And to be clear, that doesn't mean euthanasia. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about really highlighting these animals because, crying out loud, if an animal's been on the floor for 100 days, that's a pretty solid animal. They're going to be pretty good animal. All these animals that are on the floor, these are our babies, and we just want them to get into good homes. So, there is space issues. That's just the obvious statement. We only have so many spaces to care for so many animals. So the longer these animals stay here, the more we get backed up all the way down, and even the highly adoptables don't get their chance until 2 weeks later. 14 days is really, really long time for an intake situation. We need to be getting those animals moved up there after 3 days, but the problem is our adoption floor is covered with these animals that are just sitting there, and they're great, great animals that people just overlook. So we really want to start highlighting and spotlighting them more. So what we're asking of you guys is for some mainly legal type stuff that we need some support for in the community. We want to better support our animal control officers with their contracts and what their focus is on, so we can better serve our community. As Bev had mentioned, the trap, neuter, vaccinate, release legislation. We've had several meetings on that. Super excited about that. Besides managed intake, that was one of the biggest changes in DC that we made that saved lives. Mandated animal identification. We required proof of ownership to surrender an animal, and potentially surrender euthanasia fees. So I just looked this up last night. This is for our zip code of the shelter. You can see here, you have to make an appointment to get your garbage picked up. If you have something big, couch, whatever you need to dispose of, you have to make an appointment, arrange a pickup time that's probably going to be arranged. We'll be there between noon and 2, whatever, and go through this whole process for a minimum of $95. We're disposing of animals in our community for free. We're picking them up, putting our officers in danger, and for nothing. We're just making it easy for people to be lazy and not provide any information. We don't want to be where animals are disposed of. We don't want to make that okay in our community. So what we need from our community, we need positive promotion for our animals. There's been a lot of studies on marketing in animal shelters, and those Sarah McLachlan commercials, they don't work. Everyone knows about them, and what they say, I changed the station. You can't watch them. It's heartbreaking. No one wants to see that. They want to see the happy animals. They want to be able to visualize this happy bouncy dog or this kitten playing with the toilet paper in their home. People don't want to see the sad. And believe me, we have sad to show them. We have a lot of animals with heartbreaking stories, and they tend to be the happiest animals, most loving. So we need to really focus on the positive things. You know, the negativity in the community is really, really affecting our animals. We need people out there saying, hey, Guilford County, they're trying to do the best they can, you know, but this is our community. We need to help our animals. We need to find them homes. That's really, really huge. When there's negativity in the community, people are like, well, we don't want to support them if they're doing all these horrible things that, you know, why would we go to them? And that's not at all the case. We want to turn that around and say, we want you to help us make this positive for these animals. Volunteer and Foster with us are one of the many transfer organizations in our area. And then really assist with that community outreach aspect. I love educating. I love working with the community. Unfortunately, our patients keep us quite busy at the shelter, so we really need the community to reach out to the community and spread this message and the education. And they'll trust you guys. Any questions?
This is a lot of information, I'm sure.
Oh, and that's broken down.
I'm sure some of you have questions, and I don't want to stop that. We have several other agenda items to get to, and I know that some of you told me you have to leave early. But in the immediate, we can at the end certainly come back to Dr. McAndrew's presentation. Is there anybody that has any immediate questions, comments? And you know, if you all want to have a brief conversation, certainly we can, but then I do want to move on to the other things that we can come back to this.
So I had a quick